Thank you all for coming. I know it's bright and early in the morning, and it's summer. A lot of people are on vacation, so thank you so much for finding the time. My name is Dr. Gitu Goyal. I am founder and CEO of First Primary Care, which is a direct primary care practice. Dr. Dickerson and I started this Houston chapter of Free Market Medical Association about 2 years ago. This is our third event that we are doing, and we are hoping to do these meetings every quarter from here on. This is our second meeting of the year. We had a great turnout last time, and a very good feedback from our audience in terms of the value they got from our speakers and the panel discussion we have. Real quick about Free Market Medical Association. FMMA is an organization started by a TPA and an anesthesiologist out of Oklahoma City. It has a lot of chapters nationwide and is doing a lot of work in educating the consumers about the free market in healthcare, which I believe is essential to fix the mess we are in right now. Since you guys are here bright and early, I'm pretty sure you also know that we cannot take the status quo in healthcare, and we have to do something about it. So again, I appreciate you all coming. I do ask, please go look at fmma.org. Learn more about what they do, and please join FMMA to help support the fight in bringing transparency and the free market to healthcare. I do want to say quick thank you to my team. I know Grace has been working tirelessly to put this event together, and I push them a lot. So thank you so much for helping me put this together. Our goal through this chapter is threefold mostly. Number one is to educate about what's wrong with healthcare and what are the solutions to fix. Number two is collaborate. There are a lot of people doing a lot of good work in the healthcare space, and our goal is to bring all those people kind of operating in silos together so we can all learn from each other and achieve what I call the third goal of this chapter is to accelerate the free market ideas in healthcare space so we can scale them and again turn over the status quo. I do want to invite more ideas from the audience on how we can do these chapter meetings better, how we can provide more value. So if you guys have any suggestions on good speakers for us, or if you want to come speak, please reach out to us. We have started a small sponsorship level for this event also, so please talk to us about that as well. Lastly, I know a lot of the folks that have come this morning, and it's very high quality crowd, but I wanted to get an idea of what our group is kind of made of. So can I please ask all the physicians in the room to stand up for a second for me? Awesome. Can we get a quick round of applause for these guys? Thank you. And the reason I say that is I think private practice of medicine is going away. People are selling out to large corporations, hospitals, but it is necessary to maintain private practice for the free market to work, to lower healthcare costs, and to improve quality. So these guys are our cheerleaders that we need to support. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for doing what you guys do. Can I ask employers to stand up? And when I say employers, it's anybody who is representing an employer or a buyer or a patient. Whether you are a CEO, HR, CFO, anybody. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I know it is important that we have your involvement in the free market movement, because you guys are the one eventually paying for a lot of the bills that are in healthcare. So who are the other people? There are a lot of advisors in the room. A lot of people who basically are trying to advise the buyers of healthcare and the sellers of healthcare together in a free market way. So who are the advisors in the room who help people, educate how to do healthcare better? Thank you. Thank you again for coming, please. And I think it's again very important that we have you all support to scale the solutions that we are working on. So thank you. That's it for me. I'm going to pass the mic on to Dr. Dickerson to quickly introduce our speakers, and we'll get started. We have a fun lineup of speakers that you will really enjoy listening to. Thank you so much again.
Good morning, and thanks for being here in this hot July morning. We're excited to have you here. We introduced this chapter almost 2 years ago. We had really dynamic speakers who were introducing the problems in healthcare at a macroscopic level. Dave Chase and Marty Jameson and Vinu Julapalli came in and told us about what problems were out there, how large the scope of that was. And we came back more recently this year and began to present solutions to you all. And our first speaker today is somebody I met. We spoke together about 6 weeks ago at an event that Claris Benefits sponsored. And the reason Carl's here is not only is he a dynamic speaker, but also because he is out there solving problems. He's doing customized benefits plans for employers. But he's going to show you at a more microscopic level, at the claims level, at the EOB level, the kind of travesties that are out there and what we do about that, how we solve that as healthcare providers, as benefits advisors, and even as the patients. If we get a bill like that, what do we do about it, and who's out there to help us? So without much further ado, because Carl keeps threatening to take all morning with his presentation, I introduce Carl Schuessler.
Thanks, Kristen. Y'all ready to have some fun? Is that too loud? Is that better? First off, I want to thank everyone for allowing me the opportunity to come here. This is a great group. This organization, I followed. It really started the revolution, I think, back in 2009. Dr. Keith Smith and Jay Kempton really started this whole thing, and we've all kind of hitched our wagon to it. And so it's an important group, and I think it's about change. And what they've done is miraculous. Everybody knows the Surgery Center of Oklahoma followed that. Can you turn that down a little bit? I think, y'all, is that better, guys? Yeah. All right. All right. You can speak up. You're allowed to criticize. What I'm going to talk about today is what I really consider to be the greatest heist in American history. You've had the wool pulled over your eyes, and I'm going to talk about it and reveal it. And we like to call it the ultimate hope, the 6 opportunities in healthcare. So we studied the system for the last 6 years, and we identified what we consider 6 flaws, which we turn into opportunities for employers and for the physicians, people like Kristen and Gitu and all the people out there. There's so much you can do. So there is hope. There'll be a little gloom and doom in here, but I hope we cap it off well. To the employers in the room, how many of y'all's annual renewal meetings look like this? Everybody seen that? It reminds me of a song. Anybody familiar? That song is 1974 by Pilot. I think it's the only song they ever had. I had it on 8-track tape, okay? We need to change, folks. This is outdated, so it doesn't work. What if your annual renewal meeting looked like this? Healthcare costs go down, profits go up, and wages go up. It can be done. I appreciate y'all laughing, too. Did y'all like that little song? 8 in the morning. Kristen told me it was going to be hard to wake everybody up, so that's why I wore these pants. Hopefully it's bright enough to wake everybody up. Are you willing to change? This is what we face when we're out there. When we're out there trying to help employers go against status quo and look at other things. I was at a hotel here in town yesterday having the same discussion. And you always encounter people that like status quo, that are used to it. It's safe. It's an easy play. Well, this is what we get when we're out there. We don't want to be the first, and they're not the first. This is happening all over America, but then we get, where's the ROI? That's the question we always get. So what's in this for you today? We're going to pull the curtains back and let you really see why this system was designed intentionally to make your health insurance cost more. Then we're going to allow you to break free by offering you ways to have better benefits for half the cost. And lastly, you hopefully can take advantage of some of these strategies. And then the results, putting more dollars in your community. This is what this is about. The dollars are being diverted from all our communities to all these huge companies, and we'll get into that. Any questions so far? All right, I meant to, Kristen has given me till 2 o'clock to talk, so is that good with everybody? Okay. All right, I'll end up getting kicked off the stage. It normally happens. So here's a quote of the day, and this is what I believe. It isn't broken. Don't talk to me about the system being broken. It was done this way, just what we said, intentionally. So it isn't broken. The people that invented this system are brilliant. I wished I had been a part of it. Anybody a Seinfeld fan? Okay, anybody know what George can teach us about healthcare? Y'all remember the episode when he was at the cafe and he's sitting there with Jerry and he said, everything I've done in my life, my intuition, everything's never worked out right for me. So I'm going to do the opposite. So he goes up to this beautiful girl and says, my name is George, I'm unemployed, living home with my parents. And she says, have a seat. Okay, so what I say to all of you employers and everyone, if Kristen tells you to get an HSA high deductible plan, do the opposite. Don't listen. Half of every advice given out there, do the opposite. Let me tell you something real quick on what I mean on HSA plans. I had one in 2006 before it was cool. I have 5 family members. It was $260 a month for five of us. After Affordable Care Act hit and all that, it was almost $2,000 a month. I had to be out of pocket $30,000 before my insurance ever worked. That's not insurance, folks. Now, the other problem I have is I have high cholesterol. I got an Aunt Betty problem. So I'm supposed to be taking Vytorin. That's $300 a month. And I could afford it, but I got tired of it. So I quit taking it. So if I'm not taking Vytorin, do you think all your rank and file employees are taking their drugs? No. And what happens? Boom, a catastrophic blow-up claim. So those plans do not work. There's so many better ways. We believe the richer the plan, the lower the claims. We want people to take care of themselves. As a country, we've raised deductibles and out-of-pockets, and all we've done is encourage people to be scared to death to take care of themselves. Everybody agree? Yep. If you don't agree, I don't really care, but that's my view. All right, so do the opposite. I got a homework assignment for you, and I can't spend much time on this. I could talk for an hour on this slide. Anybody ever heard of the book Unaccountable? There was a TV show called The Resident that was a takeoff. Dr. Marty McCary, pancreatic surgeon at Johns Hopkins. I won't go into it all, but it'll scare you to death. I encourage you to read this because I guarantee you won't go into the hospital the same ever again. Then we've got Catastrophic Care by David Goldhill. And lastly, The American Sickness by Elizabeth Rosenthal. That is pretty deep, even for a geek like me. That book goes into it. It's pretty amazing. And y'all, by the way, if you take pictures, just leave me $100 over here at my seat. We have this is copyrighted. I'm just kidding. You can take pictures. All right. So, anybody ever heard of this book, CEO's Guide to Restoring the American Dream? Dave Chase is a world-class speaker, writer, writes for Forbes, written a lot of stuff, started the Health Rosetta movement, which is the Rosetta Stone was the blueprint for deciphering hieroglyphics. This is the blueprint to deciphering benefits, benefit cost. So we were fortunate enough and blessed to be included as one of the first 30 advisors to be in the program. And so there's now 60 or so advisors in it, but we're one of the first 30. So it's a nice honor, and that's a great book. It's got all the fixes in it. It tells you how it can be done. And one of our clients is on page 108 that is the most innovative employer in America. So check the book out. And if you see me afterwards, I'll give you a free link to the book if you don't have it. All right, what did Warren Buffett say about healthcare? Anybody know? That's very true. Kristen, this is my favorite. GM's a health and benefits company. It's not an automobile company. And the tapeworm, as Kristen said. So the funny part about this is all these guys, y'all know Chase, Amazon and Berkshire Hathaway got together and are trying to solve the problem. It looks like they're making some movement with this pill pack announcement and so forth. But where have they been? We've been doing this stuff for 6 years. So I hope that's going to be a positive change and create more momentum. So we're part of a company called Mitigate Partners, and any advisors in the room or brokers, and we can talk about whether you're a broker, an advisor, or a consultant. What I see is brokers, and brokers are the ones that peddle insurance and get paid by an insurance company. That's not an advisor. It's totally different. So we've banded together with advisors all over the country that want to share in these change and do things together. So in the past, we'd be competing with all these people, but we're all working together. So again, it's all of us coming together for the collective good of the employer. So we might show up in a meeting with 3 people from 3 different benefit organizations. So it's a different approach, and that's kind of this whole collective. Here's a map of what we look like so far around the country. If any of you want to join, it's a pretty minimum fee. It's $1 million fee to join the program. So if y'all are interested, I can stop and we can go ahead and do that. Yeah, I'm kidding. Thanks for laughing. So we use open architecture, meaning we're open to everything. We're going to change. We're evolving all the time. We're never going to sit still. Our mission statement, I'll let you read it, but really our job is to be fiduciary and stewards of our clients' money, treating it like it's ours. That's our job, and we take it pretty dadgum serious. And I don't think that everyone out there approaches it that way. So this is an important mission statement that we're all dedicated to the cutting edge resources and really about actively managing your health plan. And we'll get more to that. Our business philosophy, population health manager and advisor, not broker. You're not hiring brokers today, employers. You need to hire somebody who can help you manage your population. We're not selling insurance. It's not what we do. Not at least what our group does. So that's what you need to pay attention to, and make sure everybody's interests are aligned with each other. Work off an idea platform, not a product platform, and a financial perspective and not a product perspective. And I'm going to come back to this active management, not passive management, in a second. And then give you a full disclosure and insider's view into the industry. You're going to learn more than you've ever seen and really understand how the levers work and how everybody's profiting from your benefits. And then regain control of costs through employee education. This is something we talked about at dinner last night. We were all at dinner. Active management. When you work with, anybody know what a BUCA is? Blue Cross, United, Cigna, and Humana? You're a passive manager of your risk, folks. And that's fine as long as you know that. But if you want to be an active manager and really control the cost, you got to take a different approach. So this is about active management. When you meet someone that wants to be a passive manager, people like us are not good matches for them. But if you want to actively manage, and that's what we're going to talk about the rest of the talk. This kind of quote kind of really motivated me, and I think that's what it's about. We did a reset. We did something totally different. And we came up with a health plan called Fair Cost Health Plan. We believe in the following precepts. I've already covered this one just a minute ago. Again, this is a problem, and we're going to talk about the cartel in a few minutes. No one's interests are aligned with each other. The employer sits at the table, and everyone but the employer wants the cost to go up because they make more money from it. And employees, everyone blames employees. Hey, they don't know how to use the system. Well, it's not their fault. You went out and took away the cost of going to see a physician for a copay. And if they have to pay for something, and they go see Gitu, they're like, why do I have to pay? Do you have to buy a car when you buy a car? I mean, this is not their fault. Trend. Who knows what trend is? know if it's working. Okay. Trend. Sorry. Boy, that's sensitive. Trend. If Medicare doesn't go up each year in cost, why are we paying trend? And I'll get into that later. I'll tell you what trend is in a few minutes. I probably can't speak honestly in this room, but richer plans equal less claims. And we think you can have 10 times the benefits for half the cost. And then relocalized care build community health plans. We'll touch on that a little bit later. So you're kind of getting back to the way it was when health care worked. Anybody remember Marcus Welby? Those days were pretty good, weren't they? How about getting back together where everyone's on the same team and we don't have anybody intermediating into it, disintermediate the system? So our hope and commitment is that we were going to share these 6 opportunities with you guys, and hopefully we can educate you better and let you see the things that can be done to fix this. And we'll talk more about active management as we go. Okay, very quickly, some fundamentals and background. Anybody know this movie? That's the employer going to see the broker. That's the broker talking about lack of transparency, cost of insurance. You know who this is? This is me. It's some of you. We're Toto. We're telling everyone that it's the cost of care of why this costs so much. No one's talking about that enough. You want to pay less for health care, got to pay less for health care. I know that sounds really cliche, but it's that simple. Also, this is one of my favorites. Healthcare has not evolved like many other industries. Who knows what that is? Yeah, 1965, $29,000, 1965. You know what a family of 4's medical premium was back then? $225 a month. Look at what it is today. So we took that computer, arguably the most complicated invention in the history of the country, phone, contacts. Anybody remember a Palm Pilot? Okay. We put them together into phone and contacts. Then we had email and the web. Everybody know the next company that came up? Anybody? Named after a berry of some type? BlackBerry. What happened to BlackBerry, folks? They didn't evolve. They didn't evolve, and they're gone. Then we came out with the digital music with an iPod. Then we had the videos. We brought them together. I know y'all know where I'm going. And this is what we did. So we took the most complicated invention in American history and have been able to put it in the hands of a 95-year-old grandmother for a couple $100. Y'all know what healthcare's done? That's healthcare. All right. So what's the bottom line? Cost equals utilization times price. We can help here. We can help here. But you got to fix that first, then you work on that. I'm going to show you all a dollar bill here. And if you're an employer, you probably, thank you. Thanks, Bobby. Thank you. If you're an employer, you probably have had somebody come to you and tell you that you need to focus on your fixed cost. Anybody ever heard of that? That's the fixed cost. That's the 20% of a health plan spend that everyone talks about. Our fixed costs of what we do are very high. Fixed costs don't matter. Everybody's focused on the wrong thing. This is the problem. It's the claims. And what goes on the claims bucket. That's where you need to spend your time. Sorry about that. I apologize. So that's where you need to spend your time. But everyone wants to focus over here. Is that clear to everybody? All right. So that's where you can make the difference. If you got to put more money into this area to lower this area, what's wrong with that? So when you walk in and go, those fixed costs are high, what's your PEPM? That's the wrong question to ask. Then we've got a dereliction of fiduciary duties going on. Anybody familiar with this? What do y'all know about that? Anybody? Yeah. You got the DOL running around chasing financial advisors on the 401k on the basis points, the amount of fees they charge, while they're just tripping over bags of money in the healthcare industry that we're going to talk about in a minute. So that cartoon's by a buddy of mine. That's what's going on. And I tell you guys, ignorance is not a defense. Right now, Gap is being sued by the CFO, and the HR have been sued by the employees for some of the things I'm going to show you. Premiums keep going up, benefits get worse, and they start finding out, well, how did that procedure cost $300,000? I didn't even see half the doctors in the parts of the hospital they charged me for. So that's what's happening out there, and it's coming. It's going to be a wave, and it needs to be a wave. This 401k stuff, quit wasting time with an advisor charging a half a basis point too much. I mean, come on. All right, so that's what we're hoping to do, is get everybody's heads out of the sand. All right, very quickly, this is what I want to show you is possible, guys. You can do this if you look and build things correctly. So this is what other health plans on the right look like, and this is the fair cost program we created just to show you what's possible. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'll let you read it, but you can see it. And by the way, after you see it, and you want to throw me out of here because you think I'm full of bull, that's okay too. But we can deliver. Who's seen things like this in 50 years? You ever seen? I mean, we haven't seen this in 50 years. Look at this. There's no way you could reach this out of pocket on this plan unless you take 50 drugs a month. Now, here's the bigger part. It depends on the employer, but how about this? That's some of the premiums that the employees pay, and it includes dental and vision. That's what your employees are paying for medical insurance today at your companies, many of them. And the average employee-only premium we're seeing is $600, $700 a month. In Georgia, I know y'all thought I was from New York, but critical benchmarks, that's where our costs run per employee per year. The national average is $12,125. Then the other important benchmark is prescription drug costs per member per month. And we're in the mid-40s, 50s, and the average is 92. So it can be done, but I'm fixing now to get into, y'all like, Carl, just move it on. We get it. I'm going to get into how you can do some of this. Do y'all believe me? You sure? Okay. That's my favorite quote. All right. So let's get into the 6 opportunities, which is what I was supposed to be talking about. First is the cartel. I'm going to talk about that. Lack of pricing transparency, billing errors, traditional PPO discount game, pharmaceutical shell game, lack of information and data. That's it. If you solve all 6 of those, you could save upwards of 60%. And you can solve all those. Anybody think there's any additional problems that I left out? Y'all are allowed to speak. Anybody? Y'all want me to stop? You sure? Okay, all right. So let's talk about the cartel. That's my favorite subject. Is there any of the cartel members in here? We actually do have a few, but I don't know that you're really a part of it, but we'll address it. So the cartel, again, what I said earlier, no one cares about the cost going down but you. Everyone has these perverse incentives for the cost to go up because they win. Anybody know what the healthcare industry spent on lobbying last year? All right. What's your name, sir? Okay. You owe me $100 because you were pretty good. That was pretty good. $561 million. In January, healthcare became the largest employed sector in the country over the government. And none of it went into clinicians and people working with the patient. That's what's really sad. Now, does anybody know what oil and gas here in Houston, y'all are familiar with these terms. Y'all know what they spent combined? So if you think you can change things at Washington, D.C., which I've tried, let me tell you what I ran into. That's what I ran into, okay? That was supposed to be funny. I mean, I really worked hard on it. Wow. That's what you run into. And I tried to do this So because of this, we actually came out with a product called the Schuessler stick. A friend of mine here in Texas posted this on his blog this weekend because I made this comment. It got to the point where you're so worried about cranking your car up because you're going to blow up, right? I mean, it's that sick when you're messing with this many billions of dollars. So we decided to take a different approach and do it one employer at a time so we could avoid it. Anyway, that didn't generate a laugh either. I'll remove that slide. Okay. So anyway, it was just funny. For you guys here, if you want the Schuessler midget model, it's a 6-inch handle and has a set of knee pads. We've got them in the back, 25% discount today if you act quickly. So you're welcome to buy one. All right. The insurance companies. Who's their number one fiduciary responsibility to? Stockholder, right? What about the employer over here? The Affordable Care Act, all it did is encourage cost of care to go up because they get 1% of all of that. And I'm amazed how many people haven't figured that out. So again, that's their incentives, perverse incentives. Y'all follow the stock prices? I want y'all to focus right here. That was the growth from 09 to 17. Now watch this line here, May 17. I want you to watch now where it stands. I hope y'all are smarter than me and bought some of that. That's where all the money is. So we've broken middle-class America. That's a big part of this recent election. Middle-class America wasn't having a voice. They were getting more money in wages, but all of us going to pay premiums for medical insurance. It's employer shelter. Anybody not surprised? Pharmaceutical industry, organized crime. Y'all got to laugh a little bit. I know it's early in the morning, but come on. I got some music coming, but it's at the end, so that's not going to help. This is the Fortune 500. The parentheses are for last year, but I want to focus on a couple of these real quickly. Did anyone know these guys were that big? Now, let me ask you a question. Express Scripts, all of these companies, what's going on right now? Cigna's trying to buy Express Scripts. Aetna's trying to buy CVS Health. Why? Why is United number 6? Anybody know? They own Optum, right. I love the way they advertise Optum. It's some magical company that has, do all this neat stuff, but they never mention it. That's United Healthcare's pharmacy benefit manager, the PBM, right? Look at that. Look at these guys, all of them. The companies that make the drugs, they're way down there. So it's all the middle people that are ripping us off and killing us. And what we propose to do is you can disintermediate this system. You do not have to play this game because the only people getting rich are them. This ought to outrage y'all. Is anybody not mad? Has anybody ever seen it displayed like that? So here's how the pharmaceutical industry works. You've got the employer, the member. I'm not real smart, but I got to be some money changing hands and being lost in this mix. So there's the manufacturer. They're the 3 wholesalers. They're the top 3 pharmacy benefit managers. And here in Houston, if you've got Blue Cross or you've got Prime Therapeutics, they're another one. And then you got the pharmacies. Guys, you got to change that picture. That is killing us. Hospitals, all right. They create their own pricing, their unregulated utilities, and I want to be clear, I'm not here to bash hospitals. There's a hospital crisis going on in this country in the rural areas, but I am here to tell you there's many of these hospitals making a lot of money, and when we get into some of this, it is an issue. They're paid on volume, and I think everybody knows that, this fee-for-service model. The state of Montana went and did something pretty neat. I know this woman, Marilyn Bartlett. You ought to check her out and see what she did. Their state was, I think it was $9 million expected deficit, and now it was near $150 million in the positive. She went out with the hospitals and communicated and came up with a strategy and did some direct contracting and so forth. And it was amazing what she's done. It can be done, but think about the politics of doing that in a state. 41,000 employees and the state's got 1 million people. And then lastly, again, getting back to localized care. Any questions? Physicians, I know there are physicians in the room. You also need to know this about me. My father was an OBGYN for 40 years in Macon, Georgia, so I'm a big fan of physicians. Physicians are the least, in my opinion, part of the problem. There's some that do surgeries that don't need to be done, but for the most part, physicians are a part, but the other pieces, the other components are so big. And then you've been put in a system. That's why Gitu and Kristen, with this whole direct primary care concept, how can someone see 30 patients a day? How can you do that? So part of it is y'all been put in a system that makes it hard to succeed. And then the brokers, they make more money when the premiums go up. So who's advocating for the purchaser? That's you in the middle, hospital, insurance company, and the broker. And yelling, last time I checked, yelling at people don't help too much. So who is your advocate? Any questions so far? So this is the situation at hand for most of you. And we know the story here had a good ending, but right now that story doesn't have a good ending unless you become an active manager and do something about it. All right, lack of pricing transparency. I want to start this out with a video for you guys to see what if we bought groceries the way we buy health care.
Your bill? Your version will be mailed to you in 30 days. Good luck trying to make some sense of it.
Okay. Now, Kristen heard me and Gitu heard me do this last year. Why are y'all laughing? Why is that funny? Now, I think it's funny, too. I've seen it 3,000 times, and I laugh every time. But that's what we are working in. And you laugh. Let's do something about it. This is crazy. If I had a car for Mark, I have a car for you. I want you to take this car off my hands. And you ask me how much. I said, don't worry about it. Just take it. And we argue back and forth. Finally, you take the car. 30 days later, you get a bill for $100 grand. And you say, Carl, I didn't want this car. But you took it. You owe me $100,000. Who buys goods and services like that? Remember what I said? Healthcare is not broken. It was made this way. People are brilliant. How could you go give somebody take a product and you bill them whatever you want? It's crazy. All right, so we know it's broken, lack of competition. People are able to charge what they want. Third-party payer system, the employee, the member, really ain't paying the full cost of what happens. It's the employer or the insurance company, so they don't care. And again, we think there's some tools that we can do to help, and we're going to talk about it. And then plan design has everything to do with what you do with people. With what Kristen and Gitu are doing with their programs, you can make plan design changes to steer patients that way at lower cost, at waive a deductible, whatever it be, there's ways to do it. So, who thinks price equals quality? For the most part, so we don't argue, not in healthcare it doesn't. Let me explain. This is knee replacement stats in Pinellas County, which is St. Petersburg, Florida. All Children's Hospital did one knee replacement for $161 grand. Morton Plant did 538 for $55,000. In healthcare, what our experience has taught us is not the most expensive doctors the best. The people that do it the most charge less. And do you want someone doing a knee replacement on you, ma'am, that does it one time a year? So, but here's the bigger part. Do your employees know this? That's the problem. This is my hometown. Anybody ever heard of Atlanta? We don't have any traffic. It's a great place. Alpharetta is a suburb of Atlanta. And so we have an employee that lives there. Right by their house, they can get arthroscopic knee surgery done for $6,100. If they go to Piedmont, y'all might have heard of that. It was in the press a bunch for first part of the year. Governor Deal had to get involved, and the whole cartel, tried to figure it all out because the state health benefit plan in Georgia is 640,000 members. So it was a big hullabaloo, and they got it fixed. Who knows what happened, and who knows who was paid off. But that's what happened. And then you have this in South Atlanta at this price. Now in Atlanta, Georgia, I think it's probably like Houston. You know what that takes to get from here to here? Depends, right? Not fun. How are you going to get that member to go there? Waive a deductible, waive half the deductible, whatever it is, it can be done, folks. Here's the problem. The employees don't even know that exists. They don't even know what the costs are. And you can help these employees by using tools. I don't understand why people aren't all doing this. But these are some of the things that we're doing. So, and that's what Medicare paid, just by the way, which is accepted all over America. So here's an example of a tool that you could use. And so we like to use nurse navigators in our programs. And you call in and you talk to a nurse. We have an MD oversee it. And they're involved. They take in your call. They help you. I mean, we may even put penalties on employees if they do not call this service, depending on what the events are. Here's an example. All of these doctors are in the Blue Cross network here in Houston, okay? And Physician D is Gitu's good buddy, and they play golf together and they drink beer afterwards. A great guy, he's a wonderful person. He's a hack of a doctor. We call him Dr. Hodad. Anybody know who Dr. Hodad is? Hands of death and destruction. Sin unaccountable. It's in the book. So you want to go here, but how are you going to find that out? Taking someone's opinion of someone's a lot different than actually being able to really understand and get the facts, and you can. So here's one other example of knee replacement. This is in Pinellas County in St. Pete. There's 60 doctors that do knee replacement. 14 of them, we wanted to look at doctors that did at least 50 procedures a year. So 14 did 50. Then we got to 8 on the quality outcomes. Then the cost of the implants, 4 came out of the funnel. So there's 60 doctors your employees can see. There's only 4 that do the best job. How are you fixing that in your employer groups? How are you doing that? 10 minutes? Oh, wow. Okay, I'm in trouble. All right. Then we looked at the doctor, and this person had 4.47 deaths. Had to get knee replacement. Now, somebody asked me the other day, how do you have 0.47 death? It's a good question. I don't know. Half the body died. And then we looked at again, the hospital. So these are the kind of things that are available to you. And this is what I've often said. That's what we're dealing with today, folks. Trusting a Buka website or where to go is not a good strategy. So you got to weaponize your plan design. And you want to, if the person doesn't listen to the nurse navigator, they're okay, but their plan pays as usual. If they listen, we could waive a deductible, maybe it's a copay, the out-of-pockets are off the table, whatever, if they follow the directions. But that's what you can do with it. Billing errors, I'll be quick.
And when I got a look at these hospital bills, I couldn't believe.
Real quick, that's a CNN video, 2010, 8 years old. This is still going on. They're going to talk about some crazy bills. So I'm going to talk to you about that real quick. In October of 15, we did something really great in this country. We decided to take 17,000 codes and make them 140,000. Couldn't mess that up. No way that could be a bad thing. So hospital bills are on 99% of the time. That's what Carl Schuessler tells you. But y'all know me well enough. You can't believe anything I say. That's what our own U.S. General Accounting Office says, but they do nothing about it. Equifax is tough because they had so many problems, but they found that. Services never provided, inaccurate quality of services, etc. So here's what happens. We were at dinner last night. That was the bill Kristen got, right? Do you think Kristen paid that? What questions would she ask? This is how bills are being submitted from facilities like hospitals to the third-party administrator to the insurance company. It's a summary bill, okay? So when you go to the restaurant, you get an itemized bill, put your card down, then you get a summary bill. It's the opposite here. So here's an example of the summary bill, UBO4 as it's called. And there's an itemized statement, okay? So I'm going to show you a real-life example of my wife. She's been all over the country. So August the 6th, 2016, my wife had to have a laparoscopic appendectomy, okay? This was her UBO4 I just talked about. Everything in yellow is wrong. Now, I've been told, my friend said, why do you put a slide like that in front of people? It's so blurry. What did I say when we started today? Healthcare is not broken. It was made this way. They wanted it to be blurry. They didn't want us to be able to read it. That's the best copy we could get. And it took 2 weeks to get it. All right? So the whole bill was $29,984. You can see there if you can read that. Laparoscopic appendectomy. I'm not talking about the price. Forget that. That's another discussion. So we got the itemized bill. Everything in yellow is wrong. She got charged $204 for a urine qualitative test, which was an early pregnancy test. We could have gone down to CVS for $8. I don't go to CVS anymore. I don't support the cartel, but could have done that. Okay? Then we looked at the OR. There was an hour, and you're charged in 15-minute increments. Her charges were $5,654 for the OR. You can't charge for that and unbundle here. That is what the OR cost. All of those are routine supplies. So you can't charge me twice for it. Then we looked over here, and the oxygen was $90. The premium stapler that put the 5 holes back together was $1,360. That's a heck of a stapler. But you can't do that. It all goes here. Okay? Is everybody following so far? So the other couple of pages, by the way, did you notice this, how many pages of itemized bills there were? We had a claim at Duke. It was a cardiac catheterization. And I'm not making this up, it was $1 million for cardiac catheterization. The itemized bill was 100 pages long. That's why no one's going to ever review these. That's why no TPA is going to ever get all of these. It's too cumbersome. We have a company that does that, but you have to insert them in. So my favorite part is we got charged for an observation room, $957. We were never in. I don't know if I had a view of a dumpster downtown or the skyline or whatever. We were never in it. $957. So the truth of the matter was, when we looked at the bill, it should have been $19,000. There were $11,000 of errors on that bill. And these employers all over Houston, that's exactly what's happening to them every day, and they have no idea. So how are you going to win? Anyway, any questions? What happened to us, folks? 1943, birth of a child. What do we show about a computer? Healthcare went backwards. All right, one last one. This is a $227,000 hip replacement. There were 16 titanium screws used for $97,000. That's some unbelievable screws. We got the itemized bill. There were only 4 screws used. Saved the client $55,000. Okay? Any questions? All right. And so you've got these contractual restrictions that some of the BUCAs put on you. You can circumvent some of these. You can. And so forth. And we have programs. We watch and review all the bills that you put on that come, and that way we don't have these problems. It's worth about 17 to 25%. Most health plans spend 60% of their claims dollars on facilities. So you can do the math, 17 to 25% off of that. That's pretty normal stuff. Get some egregious hospitals like the one I showed you that my wife was in, it could be 40%. All right, traditional PPO discount games. But very quickly, let me pick on somebody. I'd pick on Chuck. Chuck, what's your favorite store to shop at?
Costco.
All right. It's your lucky day. I'm going to give you 50% off at Costco the rest of your life. One stipulation. Can't review your bill. Would you take that deal?
No.
Why?
I don't know what the cost is.
Right. What's the discount off of, folks? When you work with a BUCA, that's the game you're playing. What's the starting price? It's top-down pricing, okay? When you go buy a car, how does that work? You go and negotiate with a dealer. You've got NADA and Kelly's Blue Book. You're here, dealer's here, and if they don't come down, you're out. These prices have already been set for you, folks. And remember, the more the costs go up, the better the stock price does. All right, so anyway, again, the talk out there, buy it, you got to get a discount. Discount off of what? If anyone shares with you discounts, throw them out of the office. It means nothing. All right, and if PPO is the answer, how come costs have gone up 4 times since PPOs were introduced in the early 90s? Okay, so anyway, I'll move on past that. And this is an article you might have seen Stephen Brill wrote, the longest article in the history of Time magazine, The Bitter Pill. That tells it all right there. So what is a fair price? Very quickly, I'm going to show you, this is Houston. And this is your hospitals here, folks. So unfortunately, I hate the way I put this slide out here, but let's look at Memorial Hermann. That's what they charge compared to Medicare. This is what their unit cost is, meaning they have to at least get 28% of a bill charge for them to cover their costs and make a profit. So if they charge $100,000 for knee replacement, they need to get 28 grand, okay? But they mark it up this much. So instead of getting, if it's 100 grand, they get 50 grand. So everybody follow? That, your average markup in your community is 623%. So you get a 30, 40, 50% discount. Is that still a good deal? So that's your own town right there. And lastly, this is a hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. That's the normal hospital bill charge for CT scan. When you get the PPO discounts involved from the carriers, that's the normal charge. That's what the hospital costs to do it. They file. You can see this stuff. It's filed with CMS. $45. Now, you've heard everybody say hospitals can't make money on Medicare. Really? That's right. Right. Exactly. They're all everything's in administration. Right. And there are plenty of hospitals, folks, that have 80, 90% Medicaid dollars. They're in a whole different set of issues. I'm just talking about the big ones. So if you can't make it there, this is what most people are paying through their carrier. All right. Very quickly, this is the state of Florida, all the inpatient stays for the last 10 years. Okay. I want you to look over here at the number of days in the hospital. This is the Medicare payment. This is the commercial insurance, Blue Cross, United, Cigna, and Humana. Watch the charges to Medicare. Just watch this chart. Okay? Remember when I talked about trend earlier? Anybody know what the trend is over here in the commercial market, what the increase is? 100%. Now, guys, if we've improved technology, better medicine, better drugs, how come this length of stays went from 3.93 to 4.3? I mean, come on. Okay? Who knows what Medicare increase was? 11.2. There is no trend. Do not buy that. I just had a renewal for a smaller group of mine. It was a 14% trend. What? You know what trend is? It's the PPOs negotiating with the hospitals and the network contracts, allowing the hospitals to have escalator clauses to jack their rates, their charge master 4 times a year. That's what trend is. Don't make no mistake about it. We've got groups that had rate increases in 3 years. It's garbage. Don't buy it. All right, and here's another quick example. One of our clients had a fractured radius and a fractured humerus. Okay, I got it. Okay. That was the charges. Okay, and I know y'all all read these articles. Everybody's seen it. If we had been with a Buca, that's what we would have paid. But with our program, that's what we paid. So if you want to talk discounts, I'd say 90% is pretty good. Okay, so that you don't have to take this, folks. All right, I'm going to move past this. I'll hurry. I'll let y'all read this. That's what we're getting. All right. Lastly, pharmaceutical shell game. That's the game. Everybody seen that one before? So we know it's a black box. Y'all have already seen this. We know how confusing it is. Humira was the number 1 advertised drug a couple years ago, $344 million. We have to put all our money in R&D. That's where it all goes. Nothing went to marketing. Anybody ever turn the TV on? Humira's on every night. Okay? Pharmacy industry spent $3 billion to political class since 2008. Used to be 8% of your dollar, it's now 20 to 30%. Chuck's going to talk about this in a minute. I mean, some of these drugs, $800,000, $900,000 a year. That's the average cost of Avastin. Hopefully none of y'all had to take it for cancer. Look what Duke charges for it. All right. And then rebates. I'll let him talk about the rebates. But do you like getting a tax refund? You let the government earn interest on your money the whole time. I'd rather not worry about what I'm getting back. I'd rather pay less today up front. And that's the other problem. How do you know if you ever got all your rebates back? So again, it shouldn't be there to enrich everybody else's. So by doing this, you can save some money, get an RX consultant. That's why Chuck's here. I work with Chuck. and he can do miracles. Here's some examples. So if the client's cost is $135 per member per month, and we can get them to the national average of 88, and they got 600 employees, that's the amount of savings, guys. And if we can get them down here to where we are, that's the amount of savings. So it's all possible. And then this is, lastly, I need to wrap up. All right. Lastly, this is the bottom line. You can't measure what you can't see. The information and data we get today is so bad from these carriers, you can't find out anything about your group. But you can drill down and make it like Google. You can do real-time things to get this information. So you got to turn it into actionable intelligence. So that's what we've tried to do here. Let me scoot it out. I'll get back here and get out here. Any questions so far? I'll wrap it up here. And here's a good slide just to see. Well, it's not going to see it. It just shows you where all the money's spent. All right. This top 10%, this is 32,000 members that our data team manages. The top 10% of the members spent 73% of the cost. So you got to have programs in to control those people, and you find it through data analytics. Okay? And then this one here is a large cancer claim. We studied it was $206,000 was paid. In order to get that much of a quantity, that patient had to weigh 2,000 pounds. That's what you can find with the data, okay? Any questions so far? I'm wrapping up here. So really, in summary, hope and luck is not a strategy. You've got to do some things, folks. And it is fixed, but you got to just join us to replicate the fixes. I appreciate your time. Sure. All right, it's my pleasure also to introduce Chuck Gamsu. Chuck's got a quite extensive background. He was with the cartel at one time in the pharmacy side of things. And, you know, they say the best plaintiff's attorney was a defense attorney first. And I think it works well here with what Chuck's done. Chuck has done some remarkable things. He looked at a 163-person company we were dealing with, a hospital. Their drug spend was $482,000, and Chuck found a way to save $150,000. They were with Optum, by the way, which we changed. That you can't win in that game, as we said. So here's Chuck. Give him a round of applause.
Should be interesting. Chuck Gamsu, I'm a pharmacist. I have an MBA in healthcare. I've been doing pharmacy benefits, pharmacy benefit consulting for about 25 years. This is a really complicated product, pharmacy benefits. It's the most utilized benefit, at least understood. We're going to go into just the high level area of what you can do and what the process really is. I'm going to start off by really talking about cost. What is cost? And similar to what Carl's talked about, it's not just price. Everyone focuses on price of drugs, but it also has to do with drug mix, volume, and where you get your drugs. So I'm happy to answer questions, talk about the different areas of the pharmacy benefit. Most people utilize a consultant broker. They go through a RFP process. They select a PBM provider. They wait for finalist meetings, and then somewhere down the road, a contract comes out, which has nothing to do with the RFP process or anything else, and they get stuck. And most of the people I talk to are stuck. They look for their pharmacy costs to go down, to keep going up. I ask them basically three things. Where's your PBM contract? Some people don't have it. Have you read it? Some people haven't read it. If you do read it, do you understand it? It's probably very complicated, not from a legal standpoint, from a business standpoint. Every single thing in your PBM contract means something. You would think it'd be simple, right? A brand claim, a generic claim, a paid claim. What's a rebate? All these pieces in your pharmacy benefit contract are confusing for a reason. If I can control the definitions in your contract, I can control the discounts, I can control where you get the drugs, I can control what drugs you buy, and it goes on from there. My slides are getting better? Yeah? All right, we'll figure it out. Okay. So I'll just sort of do them by memory, and we can go through them as well. I don't want to put too much time on here. So I work for a consulting company called SkySail Rx. SkySail is really behind the scenes. We leverage technology. We have the ability to process about 1 million claims a minute. And we're looking at the details. We're looking at every single claim. And that's where a lot of people kind of miss the boat too. It's not just your top 10 or top 100 or top 1,000 drugs. It's everything. So PBMs tend to make their money by spread. They buy low, sell high. Rebates, so they'll work with drug companies and manufacturers and have different definitions of what a rebate is. Really anything from the drug manufacturer's money is entailed in rebates, but a lot of the contracts don't really disclose what rebates are. And then fees, right? So if people have a PBM right now and you look at your admin fee and it's 0, right? That's really a big red flag that your admin fee is not 0. Most of these things that Carl talked about generates the same kind of questions in PBM. Everything looks the opposite, right? Why would your rebates keep going up when your spend keeps going up? Everything's sort of tied to the cost of the drugs, the cost of the manufacturers' programs, and then pushing people into low-value drugs. So there are certain medications out there that are very high value, like insulin, right, for diabetes and taking care of certain things. But there are other drugs that are very low value, things like Duexis and Vimovo. They're OTC products combined into one Rx product. They're thousands and thousands of dollars, and the rebates are 50, 60%. And they're on these formularies. And I'm still amazed when I go through people's detailed claims file and I see these high-cost drugs on there. Most people don't realize that the PBMs are pushing those drugs in order to increase rebates and increase profitability. So the real benefit of working with an advisor consultant rather than a broker going through your process is maintaining the relationship. So we don't typically do an RFP and go away. We'll do an RFP, but then we'll focus on the contract and we stay with the client. And we stay with the client by monitoring. We monitor the claims, the contract, as well as the plan design. So whenever we look at a plan design in operation, a lot of the times no one's looked at it in years. All right. No one's looked at it in years. And when you're transitioning from one PBM to another and you're trying to replicate the benefit, all of a sudden the members start calling and saying, hey, I used to get this 90 days of Humira. Why can I only get 30 days now? Well, it was never supposed to be 90 days. Somehow a switch got flipped and the system allowed a 90-day fill. So we're trying to monitor and prevent some of these things going on. So a little bit about SkySail. We're experts in everything to do with drug benefit, and PBM management. I used to work for CVS when it was PCS, and I had another PBM I worked for as well. Embedded advisory. So we don't go in and leave. And most clients don't necessarily have that benefit, right? They go through the process every 2-3 years. They do an RFP, maybe they do an audit, but the process changes almost every day, every week. And we see things coming up. Our analytic tool, Mercury, so this is really the engine we keep improving upon. And then our clientele is very diverse. We're looking to level the playing field. So some of my partners here. We work with employers, unions, government agencies, health plans, and identifying and mitigating risk. Without looking at your plan, you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to get caught by either high costs, high prices, high volume. It really depends on what's going on. We work with a lot of consultants, so there's consultants and brokers in the room. This is very complicated. Running an RFP is very difficult, and the contracts are very, very confusing. We're happy to be behind the scenes, so we're behind the scenes for a lot of consultants that don't have the analytics or the expertise to really read and understand and write some of these PBM contracts. We work with private equity firms, so they call us saying, you know, all these mergers and acquisitions, what's really going on? And then the PBMs themselves. So I think it'd be kind of interesting, why would we help PBMs? We want to make sure the PBMs bid right. We want to make sure they live up to their promises. When a PBM doesn't price their product right or they miss their guarantees, somebody's going to owe somebody a lot of money. So we're trying to make sure that if you're a PBM and you're bidding on a group, you're going to deliver on those promises, and we're monitoring to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. And at the end of the day, you do an audit, and hopefully you don't find anything. So one of the worst things we see is people doing audits and they go, oh, I just found millions of dollars of mistakes and millions of dollars in overcharges. We would rather prevent that, right, and make sure that those things don't happen. So for our payer consultants, focusing on the contract, and the contract's probably the most important thing. That's the first step. If you ever work with an employer, you are an employer, find your PBM contract. If you're working with one of the insurance companies that Carl mentioned, one of the BUCAs, you may not have one. You have a contract with Blue Cross, and then they carve in the PBM like a Prime or some of these other things. I believe in carving out as much as you possibly can, controlling your own benefit. So having a direct contract with the PBM, and then the ability to carve out things beyond just the PBM. Carve out the specialty pharmacy, carve out the mail, carve out the clinical, carve out the PAs. Right? Why have your PBM approve 95% of prior authorizations when you could do something else, right? And that's something else that we see quite a bit, where the PBM is approving drugs really for their own benefit and their focus on volume. Insights, things change all the time. New drugs come out, new therapies, brand drugs go generic, and then specialty and biosimilars. I could talk for probably 3 hours on just the insights. Monitoring, which is really the key to really making sure that you don't go down a path of excessive costs and waste and fraud. Analytics, audit support, and independent analysis. So the only thing we really don't do is auditing. We're not an auditor. Everybody hates the auditor. But we do monitor and put the information basically in a box. If someone wants to do an audit, we'll show them everything that they're missing. So this is the status quo. I don't know if anyone can see this. This is what typically happens. Every year, 2-3 years, PBM contracts are about 3 years in length. Most people, like I said, don't have their contract, don't read their contract, don't understand their contract, and they're going to RFP with a consultant who doesn't understand it either. So they're focusing in on face value pricing. And face value pricing looks at a few things I pulled out here. List price of AWP, which is absolutely meaningless, right? Average wholesale price. It's not average, it's not wholesale, it's not the price, but that's something that the industry uses. And then looking at the discounts off of AWP. What's better, 17, 19, 14? Again, it depends. It depends on your definition of AWP. What are you counting? What's included in a brand discount of 19 versus 14? And rebates. A guarantee rebate of $250 versus $1,500. Most people gravitate towards the bigger rebate. Bigger rebate really focuses in on higher costs, right? So if I have to provide a $1,500 rebate, I'm going to make sure I push higher cost drugs and higher volume drugs in those buckets. And then admin fees. I mentioned a zero admin fee. Pass-through PBMs will provide exactly what they pay the pharmacies without making a markup or a spread or keeping rebates, but they charge an admin fee. So when you see an admin fee of $5, it's not unreasonable if you're actually getting the true cost of the drug. And then allowances, implementation allowances. I've always looked at those as sort of buying the business, right? So if you have someone providing you a $1 million implementation allowance, that's an ROI. They're making an investment and they'll get it back somewhere. After you go through this process, doing an RFP, most of these RFPs result in renewals. So why bother, right? If you're going to go out to market to get a better discount off of ADOP and a bigger rebate and just renew, you're really wasting your time. These RFPs cost about $50,000 to $100,000. And the results typically don't give you what you're looking for. They get you a bad contract. They get you higher costs, bad pricing. So all these numbers are meaningless without good contract terms. And I would say you want to use your contract or my contract, not the PBM's contract. And that's something else that people miss all the time. So this is really a big takeaway, is the homework here is find your PBM contracts and make them your contracts. Look for termination clauses, look for definitions, and find someone that can actually understand them. Everything's evidence-based as well. So I'm not accusing anybody of doing something they shouldn't do. I'm letting the evidence speak for itself, right? What does the contract say? What do your claims say? What does your plan design say? Quantities, quantity limits, overrides, all these things lead up to higher costs. And at the end of the day, we want to improve your plan performance, right? So you can have insights about, should you be having 90 days of specialty? Or should you offer split fills? So oncology, you get a 7-day supply. See if you can tolerate the drug and then get the rest. And then looking at other ways to do procurements and monitoring. I had a prospect that gave me their contract, gave me their plan design, gave me their data, and they said, we really like the monitoring service. We want to pay you to monitor this, and it was with one of the big three. And I looked at the contract and I saw what was going on. I said, I can't take your money, I can't do it. And they said, why not? I said, well, based on your contract, they're already met all their guarantees, because the contract's meaningless. It basically said, we're going to charge you whatever we want, and there is no guarantee, really. This is the fine print. Even some of those rebate guarantees excluded drugs that provide rebates. I mean, some of the language was pretty interesting. And until they're willing to change, to make some kind of wholesale change to a different provider or start over, there was really no point. So the very first thing is documentation. Document everything. People wait 2 years, 3 years to put this stuff together. You don't have to wait. Get your contract, get your plan design, document all your changes. So this is not unusual where I ask someone for their plan design and they go, oh, my copays are 10, 20, 50. Well, that's not your plan design. What's your refill too soon tolerance? What's your prior authorization criteria? We were talking to somebody that they owned the company and they were making all these overrides. And as they made overrides, they're actually changing the plan, and they never documented it. So if I approve something for Carl, but then I deny it for Chuck, that's violating your plan. So if you do enough overrides, you've actually changed your benefit. And then monitoring and looking at the last 12 months of claims data. This will tell you a lot, and there's people that'll do this. This is really where we start, and it's not that hard, but getting your data in a usable format can be difficult. We have a client that took us 6 months to get the data correct. We know what we're looking for, and we've actually seen them leave off numbers or change fields or just do things to make it difficult. So a lot of brokers or consultants give up. You know, they get some crappy data fields, and they go, well, this is the best we can do. You know, it's in a PDF, you can't even extract it. So finding somebody that can get the data, and it's not just small employers. I was in Minnesota for another meeting, Fortune 500 companies, nobody could get their data. Nobody could get it. And they don't know what questions to ask, and they don't know what kind of leverage they really have. Yeah. Do I only have 20 minutes left now? What's up, Carl?
Talk to them about why they can't get the data. I know I covered a lot of that when I spoke, but
Why can't you get your data? Because they don't want you to. They really don't want you to. They have it. It's not unique, right? So pharmacy data is probably the most universal data out there. It's all NCPDP, standardized data formats. There's 190-something fields out there. When you get 10 fields, and 7 of them are wrong, it's not a mistake, right? And I've seen the same client get good data and bad data depending on who they ask and how they ask. So it's all very available, but again, it's a game. It's a game while you can't get your data. The contract is the biggest game, right? So it really determines what price you pay, what drugs you buy, where you buy your drugs. A lot of red flags are in the contract. Whenever your contract has a requirement or an exception or a loophole, proprietary anything. So if you see proprietary algorithm or you must use the PBM's exclusive specialty pharmacy, that's where a lot of the money is being made today. Before you sign a contract or your client signs a contract, you need to make sure that those things are not in there. And then the pricing guarantees. Again, they're meaningless unless you have the right definitions. What's a brand, what's a generic, what's a rebate? Termination rights and timing is really important too. So the very first thing, once you find your contract and read it, look for the termination clause. A lot of them are evergreen, and if you don't notify the PBM of your intent to either terminate or go out to bid within that window, you automatically renew. You could renew for another year, another 3 years. A lot of these contracts are 3 years, but the ones that I see are 6 years, 9 years old. They've never been looked at or renewed, and they just get worse and worse. So the older the deal, the worse the deal. That's pretty much the standard trend. A new contract and a new deal may actually be very good, that they're actually losing money, the PBM's losing money the first year in order to make all their money in the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth year. Any questions? This is like a 3-hour discussion here. The historical pricing analysis. So once you get your contract and your data, what we're trying to determine is, what is your deal? What's the actual deal you're supposed to get? And even if you're getting a bad deal, are you getting the deal? Are you getting your contractual pricing performance? So the contract may say you're going to get 12 off AWP, and the marketplace is really at 16. Some people aren't even getting the 12. They're getting just something completely different. And then number 3, cost drivers. So what price you pay, the volume, the drug mix, and then your pharmacy network. Drugs are a commodity. So there are high-cost providers and low-cost providers. And most people, again, they don't have the incentive to shop around, but there are places like Costco, Walmart that are lower cost, and then places like CVS and Rite Aid that are higher cost. And then other clinical opportunities. Finally, you can renegotiate, try to renegotiate a bad contract, make it a better contract. Really take a look at those face value guarantees, the contractual terms. One of the key things I look for is flexibility. Flexibility in getting your data, flexibility in carving out different networks, your formula, your clinical programs. If the PBM says, no, I'm not going to do that, or that's an extra fee, that should be a red flag as well. And then other potential savings, and lastly is a new PBM contract. Again, your contract versus using the PBMs. And I think this is probably the biggest takeaway. Monitoring. Monitoring really provides a direct daily claims feed from the PBM, looking at the contractual pricing terms and definitions, looking at the operation, so exclusions. So when I worked at a PBM, mistakes happen, and we want to make sure that you correct the mistakes quickly. If a mistake happens once or twice and you catch it, there's a little money exchanged and I'm sorry, it won't happen again. But a lot of these mistakes happen once and then keep happening every month for the next 3 years. And then you do an audit and you find out that, oh my gosh, there's millions of dollars that should never have been paid, and getting your money back once it's gone out the door is virtually impossible. So making sure that the overrides, day supply, exclusions, your plan design operates accordingly. And if you've made changes and don't document it, you're putting yourself at risk as well. And there's been cases where members have sued the plan because they didn't see any good documentation and they were denied drugs for certain reasons. And then the market keeps changing. So every time I think I've got it figured out, there's a whole new thing now, right? There's a whole new drug. I can talk about the cost of medications, but there's drugs out there that now cost $1 million a year. And if you're not looking at this stuff and you don't have this stuff in your plan design, your plan's not safe. So you want to make sure it's what I call future-proof, that you have these things documented and you're able to change as the market changes. And then the analytics tool we have. Again, looking at reliability, repeatability, and scalability. There's large amounts of data out there, and a lot of the consultants we work with are using our tool to help them better monitor their own clients and make sure that they're pricing this right. So we captured the data. One of the biggest things we worked on is getting bad data fields usable. So when the PBMs send us a data field and there's fields missing and there's codes that are backwards, we can actually fix all the data fields and make it usable. And that's really the hardest thing people have, right? Again, it's getting data that's not either correct or not usable is a big challenge in the pharmacy space. Assimilating it, validating it, right? Looking for missing data. So if someone sends you a year's worth of data, but for some reason it doesn't add up, maybe they sent you only 10 months, or they sent you 15 months, or they missed a month, right? So all those kind of validations and checks and edits is very important. A lot of people waste time looking at data that's wrong or missing or maybe there's too much. And then coming up with some key performance indicators and reporting analysis. Your top drugs, your top pharmacies, the trends, the day supplies, the prices, the discounts, and really looking at what's going on and then continuing to monitor this. We actually did this for a client recently, and once we got the data after 6 months and we started looking at their pricing trends and their drug spend, we noticed a trend that the PBM was missing their numbers. And we reported back and said, looks like it's May, and you're not going to hit your guarantees by the end of the year if you don't do something. So we had a conversation with the PBM. They said, yeah, we agree. We're missing our numbers. You're right. And they changed the dial, and they fixed their discounts, and they're catching up. And they also missed their numbers the previous year before we were there, and they're going to pay back some money. I think it was about $400,000 for a small group, that if they weren't paying attention and they didn't do anything, they would have just paid it. And again, this kind of stuff happens all the time. So here's my last slide. Not a lot of big noises and things, but these are the key takeaways, right? So must have definitions in your contract. Data rights. So you have to have your data. And a lot of these contracts, they don't have data rights. The contract will actually say, this data belongs to the PBM. And if you want it, you have to pay or you can't get it. Getting that in your contract for the first time is important. Audit rights. So if you can't verify and you can't audit, you can't monitor, that's a red flag. And termination rights. A lot of the times people miss that window of opportunity and they get stuck. Document, verify, and monitor. So set it and forget it really doesn't work, but that's what most people do. It's not a high priority. It's about 25 to 30% of your healthcare spend is pharmacy, and it's going to continue to go up. And then controlling the drug mix and volume. Really looking at not only the price, but what you pay and how much you buy. There's a slide I used to use from the DEA drug take-back days. There's tons of unwanted medications right now going on, and a lot of this contributes to the opioid epidemic. There's specialty drugs that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars that get thrown away. So really controlling the volume is a really important thing. And then looking for alignment of interests. So it's the last bullet here. It's not very long, but it's probably the most important thing. There's a lot of misaligned interests within the space between the PBMs, the consultants, the carriers. When it looks too good to be true, usually it is. And this is something that we're also looking to do, is find independent providers, independent auditors, independent people, rather than focusing on just one PBM or one carrier or one relationship. So taking an active role, looking at all these things, and hopefully doing it for the long term. So happy to answer questions. Anybody have any pharmacy-related questions? I can take them later as well. But that's pretty much.
Everybody, we're out there, Chuck, you and I talk this in the marketplace, talking to employers, and then you meet somebody like Chuck, the first question is, who's your favorite
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chuck. We're gonna switch gears a little bit. You know, a lot of the first two talks apply more to self-funded employers. So people like Chris Skysail, who's the executive director of Houston Business Coalition on Health, can take those ideas back to his self-funded employers. Next speaker is Jason McKinney. He's driven from Austin, and he's gonna talk about medical cost sharing. We touched base on medical cost sharing quite a bit in our last event, and he's going to share some real life examples of how medical cost sharing as an alternative to traditional health plans can really solve a lot of our problems.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I was going to introduce myself as an insurance agent or a broker until Carl's talk, and now let's just say I'm a small business owner. About 5 years ago, I'm an insurance broker. Honest to goodness, that's what I do. I've got an insurance agency. I do P&C. I do life and health. And I've been doing it for about 18, 19 years. I actually started my agency in Houston. I'm a Houston Cougar. And about 5 years ago, my middle daughter, Riley Bell, tore her ACL playing basketball on a Saturday. Okay? I was with one of our other kids. We have 4 kids. We're completely crazy. I was with one of the other kids at a sporting event, and my wife and my daughter called me crying from the emergency room. And I always tell everybody, including my family, don't go to the emergency room unless you're dying, right? Go to an urgent care, wait till Monday, whatever. But of course, my wife does it. So we have the emergency room visit. I don't have to tell you, all the pediatrician, the orthopedic, all this stuff. I had Humana, $3,500 deductible, $6,500 max out of pocket. So I kept a spreadsheet because I'm an insurance nerd, and I spent over $7,200 on Riley Bell's knee. Physical therapy, which seemed like 10 years of it. My deductible started over because the calendar year started over. So I spent $7,200 in change, and I was paying over $1,900 a month for my premiums. So I'm sitting there looking at this, and I'm thinking, this is crazy. Not only for me, but to all the people that I'm selling insurance to. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So I went out to look for kind of another solution, and I met these guys at Sedera. They're in Austin, Texas. To be honest, it took me about a year to wrap my head around it and to really believe in it. And I believed in it enough to put my family, I've got a wife and 4 kids on it, and then I've got about 20 employees. And then I lived with it for a year to really understand it and verify that it did what it said it was going to do, and now I sell it. So I've got really 3 perspectives that I want to talk to you about. I'll make it super quick because I know y'all are ready to get out of here. But I have the perspective of a user. So I use Sedera. I have for several years. I'm a small business owner, so I'm an employer that has employees on Sedera. And then I'm an insurance broker that sells Sedera. So I really have the 3 different perspectives. So this is kind of why they created it. There's a huge cost saving over health insurance. There's no network requirement. I feel terrible sending people to the exchange to get individual health coverage because they can only get an HMO. In Austin, there's only 40% of the doctors that are even in these networks. So it's a terrible solution. They have really 3 options. There's 2 as of this slide, but they offer a $500 or $1,000 or now a $1,500 plan. I slip all the time and call it a deductible because I'm an insurance guy, but they call it the initial unshareable amount, okay? So how does it work? There's really 3 parts of it. There's the large cost needs, the small to medium needs, and the preventative care. So this is about an hour-long talk. I know you guys don't want to hear about this for an hour, so I'm going to condense it down. The easiest part to understand is the preventative part. So I always add a MEC to it, a minimum essential coverage plan, and all it does is it provides 100% coverage for the 70 or so things that the Affordable Care Act said that you had to have coverage for. So any preventative or wellness checks are covered at 100%. This part actually has a network. You'll get balanced billed if you go out of network. My doctor and my kid's pediatrician are in the network. My wife's OB is not, but after 4 kids and a hysterectomy, I'm not very smart, that's why I'm an insurance guy, but I'm smart enough to know not to ask my wife to change OBs. So I get a bill for like $47 a few weeks after she goes and gets her well woman visit and all that other stuff. The great thing about the MEC, though, is it allows you to have a health savings account. So I have an HSA on top of this. that I use to pay for my kids' braces or whatever else that I need to have it for. So that's the easiest part to understand, because the preventative works exactly like any other health insurance plan that you have. So feel free to shout out or shoot your hand up if you have any questions or comments about this, because I'd rather it be a conversation than a presentation. The large cost needs, that is the cool part about this. If I have a large need, I have the $500 plan. I know that my max out of pocket is going to be $500. So I'll give you a few examples. My daughter, Eliana, my youngest daughter, she broke her collarbone playing basketball on the 28th of December, okay? So my mom picked her up because my wife was somewhere else, and we met at Dell Children's Hospital in Austin, Texas. This is my youngest daughter. She's going to play pro basketball. I'm just kidding. She's probably going to be over 6 foot tall, and I was worried about her growth plate and everything. So we go to the hospital. They don't say anything at Dell. We go back there. All they do is they give her some Tylenol. They take a few x-rays and they put her in a sling, because that's all you can do for a broken collarbone, right? I didn't want to leave. I'm the protective daddy. I'm like, no, you've got to fix it. Like, it's still, you know, all they did was do a sling. So I'm about to leave, and the lady rolls a card in there with a computer and a printer, and she goes, okay, Mr. McKinley. She printed out. She hands me a bill, and she goes, I need a form of ID. I need proof of insurance, and this is your bill. It was like $1,527. $1,527, which actually doesn't sound too bad for an emergency room visit, but with what they did, it seemed crazy at the time, right? So I negotiated on the spot. I was, you know, that's my personality. I negotiated my son Zachary's basketball shoes at the mall a few months ago, right? My wife and my three daughters left and went to Chick-fil-A because they were so embarrassed, but I'll talk to a wall. That's my personality. My wife, she doesn't like to take something back to the store even if it's broken. So she would have just taken the bill and she would have uploaded it to Sedera. They've got a mobile app. She would have uploaded it and she would have let Sedera negotiate the bill for her. I talked to the lady. I said, look, I want your cash price. I want the best price you can give me. If you give me a good price today, I'll pay you today. If not, you'll hear from somebody else, right? So without even saying a word, she turned around, typed a few things in, and she handed me a bill for $398. So I pulled a muscle pulling my HSA card out of my wallet to pay it so fast. I thought I did a great job, right? So I paid that, all right? I paid because I have the $500 deductible or initial insurable amount plan. I paid the $398. 2 weeks later, she has an orthopedic pediatric visit, and I think I probably added a few too many syllables. I told you guys I went to U of H. So we go to the visit, and their cash price was like 200 and change. So I negotiated that down to like, you know, 150 bucks. So I went ahead and paid it. Now, anything over that claim, anything over $500, I submit to Sedera, and then they reimburse me. Okay, so I had a few other visits. So my max out of pocket for Eliana's claim is $500. That's all, and that includes the drugs, the sling, any visits, the ER visit. If she were, heaven forbid, had to have surgery for that, again, that one event or that one need or that one accident, I'm capped at $500. Okay, so that's kind of a small need. Now, my wife, she's going to be really happy that I'm telling you guys this story. She's got these varicose veins, and they're pretty bad. Like, it doesn't bother me, but she won't even wear shorts, and we live in Texas, right? I was just talking to the guy from Connecticut. I was like, man, we close our schools down if it's like 36 degrees because there might be precipitation the night before, right? So my wife's got these veins. She finally goes to the doctor, and they're like, yeah, you actually need to get these removed medically. They're terrible for you, okay? So she goes to the doctor visit, and she's like, sweet, so I'm going to submit this to Sedera. If you have a planned surgery, Sedera requires that you get a second opinion, okay? They have this service called Second MD. It's a third party. This is the way it works. They sent my wife an email on a Tuesday afternoon, and she gave electronic consent for them to take her file and electronically send it to Second MD. Second MD contacts her. It was a doctor from Houston, which she's from Conroe, right? It was a doctor from Memorial here, and he did about a 20-minute consult. He said, the only thing that I would do different is instead of having 3 procedures, because she had like the vein shrunk and then they shrunk and then she's about to have the next one next Friday where they're taken out completely. He says, I would do it in 2 procedures. So she talked to her doctor. She still decided to have in 3. I think she just wanted me to be her nurse for another 7 days. But just by taking that call, Sedera cut our deductible, our max out of pocket, in half. So they require that you take it, and then they cut it in half. So $250 is all I've spent on the 2 procedures, the future surgery my wife is going to have, you know, the pain medication, and those really sexy socks that she ordered on Amazon that she has to wear the entire summer, right? The compression deals. So the out-of-pocket compared to what you would have with traditional coverage is incredibly low with Sedera, and your premiums are lower. And so it almost sounds too good to be true. Now, let me show you the deductible or the initial insurable amount. It's per incident, okay? So if you're gonna have a baby, it's $500, right? Now, look, you don't wanna have a baby to save money. I've got 4 of them, and I'll tell you, it's not a good idea. But, you know, if my family was to have a 6th need, because for a family, it's up to 5 needs a year. For an individual, it's up to 3. If my family was to have a 6th need, I've got bigger problems in insurance, but Sedera shares first dollar on that expense, okay? So you are capped kind of for an annual out-of-pocket, but it is a per-need initial insurable amount. This is an example. I gave you a few real-life ones. Okay, so there are a few caveats. If you're using illegal drugs or you're driving and you're illegally intoxicated at the time of an accident, they're not going to pay your claim, right? And I've been all over the place and people raise their hand, well, do you think that's fair? I think it's fair because they're giving you the rules ahead of time, and that's how they keep their costs down. Also, if you're a tobacco user, they just changed this, but at the time it was $45 surcharge per month. And if you're a tobacco user and you're over the age of 50, I know you can't read the small print here, they cap what they'll share for heart disease, COPD, stroke, and cancer, right? So it might not be the best plan for you if you're over 50 and you're a tobacco user. Vaping doesn't count. How do medications work? If it's a curative medication, so if it's post or prenatal drugs for pregnancy, if it's chemotherapy for cancer, it's included in your out-of-pocket. So like my wife's pain medications for her legs, it's included in my max out-of-pocket, right? If it's a maintenance medication, you pay cash for it, right? And so here's another great example. The first time we were on this, my youngest daughter takes a very small amount of Vyvanse. She has a hard time focusing in school, and I have to fill it about 8 times a year. It was $35 with Humana. So my wife goes to CVS, which we never go to anymore. We only go to Costco. Lester Holt did a segment on GoodRx the week of Christmas, and he was standing between like a CVS and a Costco. It was amazing the price difference. And I tell people all the time, there's 2 things you can get at Costco without being a member. It's drugs and alcohol. So those are the 2 things. You don't even have to have a member to go shop at Costco. So my wife calls me from CVS because she knows I'm very thrifty. She calls me cheap, but I say thrifty. And Eliana's drug is like $360-something to fill it. So what ended up happening is Sedera helped her find a coupon from the maker of Vyvanse that made it $60, and it could be used up to 10 times. But what I've learned throughout this whole process, even being an insurance guy, and you guys know this already, like these pharmacies, they charge different prices. I thought drugs, it was just kind of universal. But they charge different prices, and you can actually know up front what it is. My family's on 4 medications. 3 of them now, 3 of the maintenance medications, 2 of my wife's allergy medications and her hormone medication for after her hysterectomy, they're cheaper now that I don't have insurance than they were with my copay. It's incredible. And we're like on the HEB buddy plan or whatever, but it's incredible to me now that we're paying less for our drugs than we did when I was paying the huge premiums, right? They also offer a discount plan, but typically they don't have it. So here's kind of the biggest caveat to Sedera, and this is the biggest hang up for a lot of employers, is they exclude pre-existing conditions. And the high blood pressure, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, non-insulin dependent diabetes, those are examples of things that are not pre-existing conditions. Now, if you have high blood pressure, you're going to be paying out of pocket yourself for your maintenance medications anyway, right? But if you do have a pre-existing condition, if you've had treatments or symptoms for the last 3 years, there's a 36-month look back, then Sedera is not going to share any expenses for that one thing the first year. Year 2, they'll share up to $25,000. Year 3, they'll share up to $50,000. And year 4, it's as if it never happened. It's fully shareable. And they'll talk you through it. You do an application, and they'll talk you through your pre-existing beforehand. But this is a hang-up, a lot of times. And so that's one thing I want to share. The second thing is the small to medium cost, and you basically pay out of pocket for those. So, when my kids go to the pediatrician now, it's in Dripping Springs, Texas. If it is a well check, I don't pay anything because I use my mech. But if it is because they're sick, then my doctor has like a $70 cash price. We were paying $35 with Humana. I've negotiated down to $60 because I have 4 kids, and I'm a friend of his. So I would pay $60. However, Second, the telemedicine, the teledoc, is something that they offer as well. Has anybody in here used teledoc? Yeah, it's awesome. So we've used it twice. One time my son Zachary had a sinus infection. I did like a 13-minute phone call, and before I hung up, they called out an antibiotic to the HEB in Dripping Springs, and then I had poison oak on my elbow from burning the brush on my property, and that was a 9-minute phone call. I was like, hey, doc, do you want to FaceTime? He's like, no, that's disgusting. So he called out a drug for me at HEB as well. So it's worked fantastic for me. I had a client that I enrolled his company. He's like about 200 employees in August, and he called me in January. He said, hey, I just want to tell you a story. I took my family to Orlando to Disney World for New Year's Eve, right? And it was New Year's Eve. It was about 10 o'clock at night. I was putting my kids to bed. His son, that was like 7 or something, was crying every time they laid him down. And he'd had tubes put in his ears prior. So they knew it was an ear infection. So he's like, oh goodness, what are we going to do? It's New Year's Eve. I'm in Orlando. I'm at a resort. So he Googled and he found the nearest ER, and his wife got an Uber. And on the elevator down to the lobby, the wife was at the presentation. She said, hey, you remember that really good-looking guy with a nice beard from Texas? She didn't really say that part, but thanks for laughing. She said, hey, remember we had this teledoc thing, and we've never used it before. So they called, and by the time the Uber driver got there and got them loaded, they had already talked to a doctor, and he called out a prescription to the Walgreens down the street. So they took the Uber there instead. He's like, dude, you saved me a couple hours and probably several $1,000s. So that's a great resource. Plus Sedera, it's really similar to the Christian cost sharing like Medishare. You don't have to sign a statement of faith, but they do have chaplaincy services. They have counseling services. They'll help you find an MRI. My wife had to get an MRI on her thumb in January. She was on her way to Longhorn Imaging, which her doctor sent her to, and she called Sedera. And she's like, well, hey, I'm going here. It's like $375 for this. And they said, okay, well, within 3 miles, here's another place we found, same exact machine, and it was like $150 less. Kind of to the point that Carl made. When we go to dinner, and it's my entire family, it costs a lot of freaking money, right? And I told you already, I'm thrifty. So everybody's ordering, and I'm like adding it up in my head. And I've even trained a couple of my kids to do this. And a couple of them, I still order off the kids' menu. And I know in my head about what it's going to cost before we ever even make the order. But we blindly go, and we've done it, and I've been guilty of it, and we're trained to do it. And we just go slap our credit card down. Hey, my doctor told me to come here to get an MRI. Hey, I'm here to get a surgery. Like we don't ask what it's going to cost. The last baby we had, I kept getting bills and bills. You know how it is after you have a baby and you're getting one from the anesthesiologist, and I couldn't understand why it was so big. And finally I got somebody on the phone, and I checked. I thought I did a good job. I made sure everybody was in network. The anesthesiologist was sick that day, so they had them fill in another one, and he was out of network. And so, things like that happen, and it's crazy. And even for an insurance guy, I have a hard time digging through all of it and finding out, hey, why am I being charged this? Why am I being charged that? But with Sedera, you upload the bill, they negotiate it, they let you know what you need to pay before you pay it. And the guy that found it's a guy named Dr. Tony Dale, who owns the Caris Group. So they're actually the ones that do the negotiations. But logistically, I'll kind of end with this, and I'll show you what the pricing is, because it sounds, again, like Carl's. It sounds too good to be true, and that's what I thought about it. But logistically, let's say someone's got an employee, or you have a gallbladder that you need to have removed, and let's say it's an $8,000 surgery. I'm just pulling these numbers out of the sky, and I've enrolled a lot of blue-collar companies. Well, this is the way logistically it would work, right? Because it's not like the emergency room. A lot of them are going to require payment before they have the surgery. So the way I did it with my wife is I used my health savings account, and then I didn't have enough in it, or I wanted to save some for Zachary's braces. So I used my Southwest Airlines Visa card to get points. And then I submitted those receipts, and Sedera pays me back. They cut checks like every Wednesday. If you don't have the ability to pay for that $8,000 surgery or whatever it is that Sedera negotiated it down to, they will actually send you the money for you to deposit before you pay the doctor when you show up for the surgery. So it's not like you always have to get reimbursed, because that's a concern of a lot of employers as well. So logistically, you would let them negotiate. They would call the doctor, they would call the facility on your behalf, they would do all the negotiation, and then you would show up and you would pay the negotiated amount, right? You could either pay it and get reimbursed, or you can get funds from them if you needed them beforehand to pay it, okay? Okay, they have 5 minutes. kind of my last slide here. These are just, and I won't go, I'm sure everybody in this room knows, but there's great advantages, I think, to the MEC. Most of them are due to the health savings account, which I try to get everybody to open at the same time. So I'm going to kind of show you their pricing, which is they're actually changing for the first time. But this is the $500 plan, the $500 initial insurable amount, and this is the $1,000. So as you can see, me, just as a family, I was paying over $1,900. Now my total cost is $761. So as an employer, I'm saving about $25,000 a year, okay? And then as an individual, as a family, I'm saving another $1,200 a month. Plus, when something large happens, I'm not out, you know, my total out of pocket of $7,000 or whatever it is. If something large happens, I'm out the $500, or in my wife's case, you know, we got a second opinion and I'm out $250. So the savings are substantial. The thing that I run into is there are so many employers and utilizers, just like I was, that are so skeptical and they're so resistant to changing this, right? They want one of the big blue crosses, the Humanas, and they just want to go and they just want to slap their card down and know that they're going to pay a copay. But I think if you put something in a spreadsheet or you look at it over the course of a year and you say, you know what, I am going to pay cash for this, I'm going to pay out of pocket. But if you look at the actual savings I'm going to have over the course of a year, something like this, in my opinion, really makes sense. So of all the groups I have, I probably have moved almost half of them to this solution. And of all the groups I have in 37 states, I've got about 120, 130 Sedera groups, and I haven't had one of them leave yet. So I think that's kind of the biggest story to tell. You know, about a plan is, you know, you can look online, you can look at reviews. I think my grandmother even has bad reviews online. Everybody has bad experiences somewhere. I can't find anybody that will say, hey, I left Sedera because of this reason. I'm sure there are, and I'm sure there will be. It just hasn't been my experience. And I've had a great experience with it as well. So any questions about Sedera or how it works? Awesome. Thank you for having me. Yes, sir. They don't. It's the same program for everybody, and their pricing, it's not done by sex or by age, other than the fact that if you're 30 years old or over, you pay the top price, and if you're 29 years or younger, you pay the bottom price. So I know I don't look a day over 55, but I just turned 40. I pay this price. If I was 29 years or younger and I had a family, I would pay this price.
So what you're saying is the price is higher for the age, but can you mix Medicare payments in with it? For example, I've got a couple clients who have a number of employees that are over 65. They get Medicare, so the company reimburses them for Medicare payment and then provides supplemental care. Right. Would Sedera work for them?
It has in my experience.
Okay.
And so again, you know, they're going to pay the same price as me because they're over 30, just like I am. And in my experience, it has worked for them. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I was going to say that, you know, Sedera is one medical cost sharing company. There are several others, but Sedera has definitely made most progress in terms of how to work with companies. And I know there are several people in this room who are looking at that option in terms of, you know, whether that works for them.
Right. In my opinion, it's the best for groups. It is the best for employers. It is clunky. I tell everyone, hey, you know, for the first 60 days, it's not what you're used to. You know, because you've got to pay the MEC separate. The way Sedera works is they open kind of an escrow account, I call it an escrow account, with you at a bank. They can't legally hold your funds because they're not an insurance carrier. So you transfer your premium payments, basically they send you invoice, you transfer it into that other account. they immediately take their admin fees out, and whatever's left over, that is what they use to pay the claims. And you're not going to be negatively impacted, or your account is not going to be negatively impacted if you have a terrible year in terms of claims for your group, because they paid the claims proportionally for everyone in the community. So if there's a guy in Idaho that has a $1 million claim, and again, I'm not good at math. I told you I went to the University of Houston. So let's say there's 1 million members, and you have 7 in your group. Well, they're going to pull $7 out of your account to pay that $1 million claim. That's if they negotiate it down. You know, if there's $1 million claim, my guess is they're probably going to negotiate it down somewhere around $200,000, right? So you're going to pay a couple dollars out of your account, and they're going to do that. They're going to pay the claim using your funds, whether it's your group or whether it's another one of their groups across the country.
Any questions, comments from our audience?
So for like single, let's say startup companies, what would you recommend, since this is for for like groups, companies? So for single startups or single company, which one would you recommend?
For like smaller companies?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have no minimum participation requirement. So you can have a group of 20 people and only 2 people in the group can take it. Or you can, I've got many 2-person groups, even husband and wife groups. Now they do add it's like a $20 surcharge per person if it's under 5 people, but they don't have any minimum. You can't have a 1-person group, but I've written several 2-person groups with them. So I think it's still, you know, probably a good option. Certainly, I think it's better than going and getting individual coverage. It's a good question. Any other questions or comments?
So what we are hoping to do in our next event is make it more of a, you know, round table, so where everybody can participate. So our next event will be in October. And I would love to see you guys back, and we're hoping that at every table we can have all stakeholders, which is doctors, employers, as well as advisors, and we can all discuss ideas that are working for us locally, and again, how to share them with each other and how to accelerate those ideas so we can do it at a larger scale.
One other quick story. Yesterday, it was last week, one of our clients, and when I share with y'all about trying to be an active manager, these are the kind of things you can do, but we had an employee that was 23 weeks pregnant, and they were bedridden, and they were having a test done on Friday that was going to let the doctor know whether they were going to admit them to the hospital or not. And this is in the southwest Gulf Coast region of Florida, you're looking at hospitals charging some of them 5,600% of Medicare. So the situation Friday we found out was good. They weren't going to have to be put in the hospital, et cetera, but we had a whole program set out to negotiate and work on it. Unfortunately, on Saturday, she gave birth, had a C-section, and the child was 1.5 pounds. And it's awful. But the reason I'm sharing this is we had, right on top of that, had negotiated a C-section for about $7,500, and the cost down there is about $35,000 cash. We also had negotiated the NICU room for $500 a day, about $7,000 or $10,000 a day normally. And unfortunately, this is part of the cartel that I wanted to say. The members said they had insurance. They didn't know we were doing this post-fact. So we had negotiated the whole deal. We were fixing to pay the claim, and when they found out they had insurance, all bets are off. We're probably looking at $1 million claim now. So and I think we'll have fun going to court on that one. I think we'll win that because we have all the documentation, but that's what you're up against. Because they've got insurance now, they can just charge whatever they want. Just wanted to share that example.
We are done, so if anybody wants to leave, please feel free to leave. But if you all want to stick around, we do have the room for a few more minutes. We can, all talk. Thank you. Thank you again for coming.